in our headlines on this Wednesday, December 24th, here in South Korea. Seoul and Washington reportedly see eye-to-eye on the need for a separate agreement to advance South Korea's nuclear submarine ambitions, and a U.S. delegation will be in South Korea early next year for related consultations. Meanwhile, the ruling Democratic Party on this Wednesday passes a bill aimed at tackling false information, but the opposition People Power Party claims the act seeks to silence criticism of the government. And authorities are working around the clock to stabilize the South Korean won's surrender to the US dollar. And among the latest measures are tax incentives for investments in local stocks. National Security Advisor Wee Sung-lak says Seoul and Washington have agreed to seal a separate deal in support of nuclear-powered submarines for South Korea. Yoon Jung-min has our top story.
Following a recent trip to Washington, National Security Advisor Wee Sung-lak noted that South Korea and the U.S. have agreed to pursue a separate agreement for bilateral cooperation for Seoul to build nuclear-powered submarines. He held a press briefing on Wednesday, saying that he had in-depth talks with his American counterpart, Marco Rubio, and U.S. Energy Secretary Chris Wright for follow-up measures to the allies' joint fact sheet.
When it comes to the reprocessing of spent fuel and uranium enrichment, I explained the fact that our president has emphasized his will for non-proliferation multiple times. We also stressed that it amounts to bilateral strategic cooperation for energy security.
With the current bilateral nuclear energy pact banning the transfer of nuclear material for military purposes, the top security advisor mentioned the case of Australia being granted an exception in acquiring nuclear-powered submarines. He also noted that Seoul does not consider securing highly enriched uranium to fuel a sub. Instead, it plans to use low-enriched uranium. A U.S. delegation will visit Korea early next year for working-level consultations to speed up the process. On top of that, resuming dialogue with North Korea was high on the agenda as he met UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres in New York.
With various diplomatic opportunities in mind for the first half of next year, we discussed ways to cooperate with the U.S. to resume dialogue with North Korea.
When asked, the official said no discussion was made on whether to adjust the Seoul-Washington joint military exercises to bring Pyongyang back to the negotiating table. We also visited Canada and Japan in time for his U.S. trip, where he discussed defense partnership with Ottawa as Seoul seeks to take part in its diesel submarine project, and shared consensus with Tokyo on continuing the so-called shuttle diplomacy at the top level. When it comes to the recent controversy over what's seen as friction within government ministries over North Korea policy, we remained tight-lipped, saying that it's undesirable to publicly reveal confusion, as he stressed the importance of coordination. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
The ruling Democratic Party on this Wednesday passes a bill aimed at tackling false information, but the opposition People Power Party calls the act unconstitutional. Our Kim Bo-kyung explains.
After putting an end to the filibuster that reached its 24-hour limit, the ruling Democratic Party put a revised Information and Communications Network Act to a vote, leading to a passage at around Wednesday noon.
I hereby declare that the amendment to the alternative bill for the partial revision of the Act on the Promotion of Information and Communications Network, Utilization, and Information Protection has been passed, with 170 votes in favor, 3 against, and 4 abstentions, out of 177 members present.
The core of the bill is to prohibit the distribution of false or manipulated information that infringes on others' rights or the public interest with the intent to cause harm or gain unjust benefits. It includes a clause to impose punitive damages of up to 5 times the victim's losses on those who intentionally spread false or manipulated information. The People Power Party lawmakers boycotted the vote, and the party's floor leader said the bills, including one to establish a special tribunal dedicated to insurrection cases that passed the plenary session on Tuesday, are clearly unconstitutional, and that the party will urge the president to veto. The ruling Democratic Party had unilaterally passed a bill on Tuesday to set up a special tribunal to handle insurrection cases stemming from former President Yoon Suk-yeol's martial law declaration.
I hereby declare that the amendment to the Special Act on the establishment of a special martial law tribunal and the protection of whistleblowers regarding the martial law bid by Yoon Suk-yeol has been passed.
Lawmakers voted 175 for and 2 against, with 2 abstentions, as the People Power Party boycotted the vote. The bill calls for the establishment of at least 2 special tribunals, each at the Seoul Central District Court and the Seoul High Court, to handle cases of alleged insurrection, treason, and rebellion. Accusing the DP of trying to take control over the judiciary, the lawmakers of the PPP had staged a filibuster to block the bill, with the party's leader Jang Dong-hyuk setting a new record for the longest filibuster speech, speaking for 24 hours, only to be stopped on Tuesday noon. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
In other news, the South Korean currency has regained some ground today against the US dollar following related measures by relevant authorities to stabilize the foreign exchange market. Our economics correspondent Park Jun-han has details.
Foreign exchange rate bodies here have announced that action would be taken to stabilize the country's FX market. The Ministry of Economy and Finance and the Bank of Korea said in a joint release on Wednesday that a weak Korean won was not desirable, and the government's commitment to addressing this would be seen soon. Following the announcement, the US dollar plunged by 33.81 from Tuesday's close to below 1,451 on Wednesday. The exchange rate had closed above 1,481 on Monday and Tuesday for the first time since the March 2009 global financial crisis. On Wednesday morning, the Ministry of Economy and Finance announced tax incentives to counter the recent weakness of the won against major currencies. The plan was introduced to revitalize the domestic stock market by bringing back retail investors who have been buying overseas shares. Under the Reshoring Investment Account, or RIA, the government will offer a temporary 20% capital gains tax exemption on proceeds of overseas stock sales after the standard deduction. To be eligible, individual investors have to sell their foreign shares held as of December 23rd, convert the proceeds into Korean won, and reinvest them in domestic equities for at least 1 year. The ministry said the specific figures for the tax benefits will be finalized after further review. In a separate meeting, Deputy Finance Minister for International Affairs Choi Ji-young warned market participants to be mindful that expectations of further depreciation of the won could lead to unfavorable outcomes. The government expects Wednesday's plan to redirect part of the end of the third quarter value of retail overseas holdings, totaling $161 billion, back into domestic markets, easing concerns over the won's weakness while strengthening support for the benchmark Kospi, which is up 71% to date this year. Park Jun-han, Arirang News.
And the government is extending its fuel tax cuts for 2 more months amid higher oil prices driven by a weaker won. The cuts reduce gasoline taxes by 7% and diesel and liquefied petroleum gas by 10%. The reductions will be in place until the end of February next year and are expected to keep prices down by 57 won per litre for gasoline, 58 won for diesel, and 20 won for LPG. Meanwhile, tax cuts on individual car purchases have also been extended by 6 months to June 30th next year to boost auto sales. The tax cut, though initially set at 5%, has been lowered to 3.5%. Meanwhile, the combined share value held by South Korea's top 100 stockholders surged by nearly $54 billion on year to reach some $136 billion thus far this year. According to research firm CEO Score, this latest sum marks a nearly 65% rise on year. Topping the list is Lee Jae-yong, chairman of Samsung Electronics, whose personal stock holdings jumped by roughly $8.7 billion from about $9.3 billion at the end of 2024 to nearly $18 billion this month. The U.S. economy grew 4.3% on year in the third quarter on the back of domestic consumption and shipments overseas. Our Lee Seung-jae reports.
According to an initial estimate released by the U.S. Commerce Department's Bureau of Economic Analysis on Wednesday, the U.S. economy expanded at a 4.3% annualized rate in the third quarter, its fastest pace since the third quarter of 2023. The growth rate significantly exceeded market expectations, as economists polled by Reuters had forecasted GDP growth of 3.3%. The stronger-than-expected performance was driven largely by resilient consumer spending. Household consumption rose at its fastest pace in nearly a year, as Americans spent more on recreational goods, vehicles, and international travel, underscoring continued demand despite elevated living costs. Exports also rebounded sharply, providing another major boost to economic growth. Business investment remained solid, with companies continuing to invest in equipment and artificial intelligence, reflecting confidence in long-term productivity gains. Government spending, particularly on defense, also contributed positively to GDP. Following the GDP report, U.S. President Donald Trump issued a public message linking the stronger growth figures to his trade policies. In a post on Truth Social, Trump stated that tariffs were responsible for what he described as great U.S. economic numbers, adding that the economy would continue to improve further. He also claimed inflation was absent and cited strong national security. Financial markets also responded positively to the economic data. U.S. stocks advanced, with the S&P 500 closing at a record high as investors reacted to the stronger growth outlook.
And so we see pretty much all the indices today being up on positive news, and the expectation that the economy is stronger than we're giving it credit for in the market at this point.
Economists say easing policy uncertainty, the impact of tax cuts, and recent monetary easing are expected to support stronger U.S. economic growth in 2026. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
And following his order of a complete blockade of sanctioned oil tankers to and from Venezuela, U.S. President Donald Trump now says the airspace around the Latin American countries should be considered closed. Our Ian Jin covers his remarks.
U.S. officials and flight tracking data confirmed on Tuesday that the U.S. moved large numbers of special operations aircraft, troops, and equipment into the Caribbean this week as U.S. President Donald Trump continues to build pressure on Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. A U.S. official said at least 10 CV-22 Osprey tilt-rotor aircraft, which are used by special operations forces, were flown into the region on Monday night. Flight tracking data confirmed that a C-17 cargo aircraft also arrived in Puerto Rico on Monday. Though details haven't been revealed, another U.S. official has confirmed the transportation of military personnel and equipment on planes. The U.S. has also been pouring additional firepower into the region, including squadrons of jet fighters, electronic warfare planes, and rescue helicopters. Though the spokesperson for the U.S. military in Latin America declined to answer questions, the nature of the aircraft, operation units and bases involved, and their movements suggest that the Trump administration has already decided on a course of action and forces are being positioned to take action. The units involved include those trained to support high-risk infiltration and extraction missions and provide close air and combat support. This is seen as the Trump administration's continued efforts to increase pressure on Maduro as the U.S. seized another oil tanker last week, representing a major escalation of tension between the two nations. On Monday, Trump referred to the U.S. warships in the Caribbean, which include 5 destroyers, an aircraft carrier strike group, and a marine amphibious ready group, as a massive armada and the biggest ever in South America, adding that a similar program would start on land, suggesting the possibility of land strikes. The Trump administration has designated Maduro's government as a foreign terrorist organization, accusing Venezuela of using oil revenues to fund drug-related crimes, including drug shipments into the U.S. Ian Jin, Arirang News.
Back here in South Korea, the presidential office is resuming its former name, Cheongwade, starting next Monday, that is December 29th. A notice regarding this intention was shared with the presidential press pool earlier on this Wednesday by the top office. It added that the presidential flag bearing two phoenixes currently flown at the Yongsan presidential office will be lowered at midnight on December 29th. At the same time, the same flag will be raised at Cheongwade, the Blue House. A former EU ambassador to South Korea is urging for strategic responsibility from South Korea in the new year, given the country's economic and technological standing. Our foreign affairs correspondent Oh Soo-young shares his remarks.
South Korea's expanding global role is bringing new diplomatic leadership expectations as cooperation with the European Union takes on greater strategic importance. Michael Reiterer, a former European Union ambassador to South Korea and now a professor at the Brussels School of Governance, specializing in Northeast Asia's geopolitical dynamics, said South Korea's economic and democratic standing is driving new expectations.
What is essential is that Korea takes up shoulders the responsibility which comes when you are the 10th or 11th largest economy in the world. That brings responsibility. And one of the responsibilities is that you have a broader outlook on the region and on the world.
A broader outlook is necessary as Washington's latest national security strategy brings about geopolitical uncertainty, as the document's omission of crucial security matters raises questions about how the United States views partnerships with its allies. Concerns are growing across Northeast Asia and Europe as North Korea and Russia deepen military cooperation. Amid Russia's war in Ukraine, Pyongyang has supplied artillery and troops to Moscow, and in turn has received political and technological support that could potentially enhance the North Korean regime's weapons of mass destruction. Here, coordination is essential between Seoul and Brussels.
The European Union is supporting Korean policy on the Korean Peninsula in order to achieve peace and also to work towards stability, where denuclearization remains a long-term goal.
While countries increasingly pursue self-reliance and nationalism, Reiterer stressed that cooperation is key.
Strategic autonomy, I must admit I don't like that term. I prefer to talk about strategic responsibility. Responsibility means you have to take action. You have to be an active part. We need rule of law. We have to avoid that we have a policy of might is right. And I think this is something where European Union and the Republic of Korea can work hand in hand, as other strategic partners in the region, for instance, Japan. So the cooperation between Japan and Korea is essential for the stability in Northeast Asia.
Beyond traditional security, he said, countries must build economic resilience together.
We do not need deglobalization, we need more cooperation in order to achieve more security and resilience. So that's something which we need not only in terms of security, I mean hard security, we also need it in terms of economic security. So the organizing supply chains and also production chains has become an essential part of security politics.
Technology sits at the center of that shift. South Korea is a global leader in semiconductors and advanced manufacturing, producing about 60% of the world's memory chips.
We are all used to the saying, it's the economy stupid, and I would change that to it's the technology stupid. And there, Korea is not stupid because it is a leading country. And if the European Union and Korea join their efforts, I think that can make a contribution, and also to the security of both countries.
South Korea has joined Horizon Europe, the EU's €95 billion research programme. Seoul and Brussels are also preparing to launch the EU-Korea Technology Council at a ministerial level. Reuters says as cooperation expands into strategic areas, the two sides must lead on upholding international frameworks while shaping new standards, including on artificial intelligence. Reuters says Seoul is well positioned to do so, having also proven its democratic resilience this year, while restoring confidence in its role in global governance with the successful hosting of APEC following months of political turbulence after martial law last year.
The important task of the new president was to give the clear signal that Korea is back, that there is no sustained problem with democracy, and that Korea can play an international role.
Looking ahead, with geopolitical and economic uncertainty set to continue next year, 2026 is expected to be a test of how firmly South Korea anchors its expanded role on the world stage. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you everything you need to know from around the globe. The U.S. Justice Department has released new documents on the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, which revealed that President Donald Trump flew on Epstein's private jet more frequently than previously reported. Nearly 30,000 pages of documents were released on Monday in the largest document drop yet. They include an email from a federal prosecutor which confirms Trump took at least 8 flights between 1993 and 1996, including one where only he and Epstein were listed as passengers. The Justice Department on Tuesday warned the release includes untrue and sensationalist claims and said a letter claiming to be from Epstein to Larry Nassar was confirmed as fake by the FBI. The White House dismissed the release as a political distraction filled with unfounded claims. A private jet carrying Libya's military chief and 4 top officers crashed on Tuesday, killing everyone on board. General Muhammad Ali Ahmad al-Haddad died alongside the head of ground forces and 3 other senior staff members. Turkish authorities lost contact with the Falcon 50 jet 40 minutes after takeoff from Ankara's Esenboğa airport on Tuesday night. Witnesses reported seeing an explosion light up the night sky near the village of Kesikavak. The delegation was returning from high-level defense talks in Ankara. In the U.S. on Tuesday, an explosion at a nursing home near Philadelphia collapsed a section of the building, trapping elderly residents inside. Rescue crews from across the region are currently searching the rubble for survivors at the 174-bed Silver Lake Healthcare Center in Bristol Township. Authorities said there had been injuries reported but did not confirm any fatalities. Local schools have been converted into emergency shelters. A public utility crew was already on site when the explosion occurred following reports of a gas smell. The cause of the explosion is still being investigated. Representatives of British street artist Banksy confirmed a new mural that appeared in London on Monday is the work of a reclusive artist. The image in Bayswater features 2 children in winter gear lying on the ground with one of them pointing toward the sky. Watchers say the work is a commentary on homelessness. The Bayswater mural follows the appearance of an identical one last Friday near London's Centre Point Tower, an area known for housing crisis protests, although Banksy has not admitted to being the artist of the earlier work. Chu Ji-hyun, Arirang News.
A strong cold wave is expected to move in starting on Christmas Day. Tomorrow morning temperature in Seoul will plummet to -4 degrees Celsius, about 6 degrees colder than this morning, and daytime highs will stay around -1 degree, keeping temperatures below freezing all day. Skies will be mostly clear nationwide tomorrow, but heavy snow is forecast along the west coast due to the freezing air. The mountainous areas of Jeju Island could have over 15 centimeters of snow, while 2 to 7 centimeters are expected along the west coast of the Jeollado provinces. Sub-zero cold will be seen tomorrow morning in many areas, with Chuncheon and Daejeon at -3 degrees. Daily highs will rise to 5 degrees in Daegu and Gyeongju, 8 degrees in Busan and Jeju. The cold wave will peak on Friday, with the morning temperature in Seoul plunging sharply to -12 degrees. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world. Right, those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. From all of us at Arirang's News Center, thank you for watching and do have a Merry Christmas. See you same time on Friday.